Some believe that harsh worlds give birth to harsh people. That environment and struggle makes them uncaring, brash, or even brutal. A reflection of the cruelty of their home. But that's not always true. For those who experienced true struggle against the harsh environment of their world, the weather, the native fauna and flora, know one thing above all else. If you work alone, you can survive. Just barely. But if you want to thrive, you need more than yourself. To thrive, you need a tribe. You need a community. You need unity and one shared purpose. One shared vision. The one path leading to the greater good of all. That was the truth found by the ethereals among both fertile and arid lands of T'au, the homeworld of their species. It was in the bloody age of Montau that they saw the truth of that. The tribes were slaughtering each other on such grand scale that their entire species was on the brink of total annihilation. If that madness wasn't stopped, the Tau would end up stuck in the endless struggle against one another, leading to their destruction. Through the millennia of their history, the Tau found many worlds that proven that theory. The Rehichi, who were now loyal members of the coalition, engulfed their world in the nuclear fire, turning it into a wasteland. What little remained of their civilization fought over scraps until the orcs landed on their world. The Green Menace occupied their planet for decades before the Tau found them and saved them, not only from the orcs, but also themselves. The Devdas waged wars against each other for untold generations. Even after reaching space age and colonizing 2 planets in their home system, they couldn't stop their violent nature. Split into 3 warring states, they were ready to exterminate one another. Once again, it was the Tau who came to save them from themselves. The entire Keshi cluster was marked with scars of a war of gigantic scale, marks of stars going supernova, creating anomalies and treacherous nebulas. Worlds infected with horrible parasites, toxic wastelands, marks of nuclear warfare. The civilizations that endured there lived in the skeletons of what once was. Still waging wars and struggling to survive. It was the Tau who saved them, who showed them the path to the light. There were many more civilizations in similar state when the Tau found them, and just as many ruins, proving that Tau were sometimes too late to arrive. The dead world of Sha'aru was still covered in fire and smoke of nuclear war when they found it. They arrived 2 weeks too late. Whatever horror the civilization that existed there unleashed, it not only ignited the atmosphere, but cracked the very continents. There was no one to save there, nothing to recover. A few unknown symbols and scraps of metal in orbit was all that remained of the unnamed victims of their own ignorance. This was the great truth of this galaxy. So many species were ignorant of a greater good, that couldn't see beyond their own selfishness and their own greed. It was the role of the united authority of the Tau Empire to save them, and it was the Ethereal's role to guide everyone onto the one path. Those were the thoughts of Aun Va as he looked out of tinted window high in the spire of his civilization capital of Theo Town, the very same city where the Ethereals revealed themselves for the first time and brought the light of Tau Va to the warring tribes of the world. They saved them that day. They saved so many since then. Civilization after civilization was brought into the light, taught about selflessness and harmony, about the common purpose, about the greater good. Even if the current form of guiding wasn't perfect, the coalition was an alliance, not an empire, despite what some dissidents would claim. The Tau were first among the equals, and the Ethereals were first among the Tau, but they didn't hold supreme power. Not yet, at least. The High Coalition Council deliberated, bickered, and discussed every major decision that was to be taken. For a very long time now, it was caught in indecision. The fifth sphere of expansion unofficially came to an end almost 50 Tau Sir ago, and the council was yet to decide what would be the next great goal of the coalition. Was the fifth sphere of expansion to be continued? Was a new age of security to be announced? Or maybe, for the first time in over 2000 Tau Sir, would the age of expansion be followed by another age of expansion, rather than age of security? He gripped the side of his throne just a little bit harder, the only show of his frustration. People started to call this time of indecision transition period, or even the small age. Many forces were fighting over influence in the High Council, but two of them stood above them all. The cooperators desired to secure coalition borders and begin a new age of security. Their vision for potential expansion was limited and focused in the galactic south, mostly against the orcs, who infested that region. They were the main force keeping the upstart Oshova on Arkunasha, keeping the orc menace in check for years now. A folly, Aunva knew. Curing worlds of orc infection was a challenging and time-consuming task, a waste of resources. The expansionists, on the other hand, desired to begin a new sphere of expansion. Not to build fortifications, but to keep up the momentum of spreading the greater good. Especially now, after the anomaly that surrounded the region of the galaxy finally broke apart. Their goal lay in the north and east of the galaxy, in the shattered realms of the Imperium of Man. An Imperium that wasn't as weak or disjointed as he and many of his peers initially expected. Or so it would seem. What are we to do, mighty one? A questioning tone of Poro Tau Kaiseta broke his silent musings. But he didn't answer, not straight away. The report that arrived to the capital was concerning, to an extent at least. Those reports, Aunva began. What do you think of them, Shadow Wave? He asked the watercast in charge of the intelligence gathering, using his title as he slowly turned around. The drone he sat on top of, humming with power, keeping a meter above the ground. The watercast bowed deeply, making a sign of a shadow of a great beast, concern and uncertainty clear in his fingers. Our efforts to influence Guella worlds are being countered with great efficiency, he answered. It, without a doubt, indicates a coordinated effort of a powerful organization, one that stands above local authority. Our agents noted a few strange movements here and there, but overall, it seems that local powers aren't directly responsible for blocking our efforts. Aunva made a sign of wisdom gained through patience. Perhaps, but you said only our northern efforts are being blocked, he noted. Indeed, mighty one. Shadow Wave made a sign of a breaking tide. Our efforts near the Black Reef, and especially world of Nimbosa, remain undisturbed. Oshasera's victory in the Black Reef War ensured our stable foothold near the so-called Jericho Reach territories, he answered. My colleagues suspect that either those regions do not cooperate with each other, or the organization countering us in the north either doesn't have power or agents in the east. Aunva nodded his head, making a sign of fortunate tidings with regal authority in his fingers. You also spoke of heightened activity of pirate raids in the north. His words were spoken like a statement, but both knew it was a question. Yes, mighty one, it's not my sphere to speak of such things. You will have to contact Core about the details. He made a sign of balance between the spheres. But from what I found out, there have been incursions into our territory. I heard that few of cathedral ships of the humans reached all the way to Silk L. Aunva furrowed his brow at that. Silk L was in the coalition territory proper, within the newly established Sept of Akela, Sept which expansionists invested much into in the hopes of making it a staging base for the further expansion and total integration of allied human territories in so-called Titania region. He will have to convene an elemental council to get all the information he wanted. But that could wait. Anything else worth of note? He asked. Shadow Wave hesitated for a moment before making a sign of a whisper on the waves. There are rumors, mighty one, coming from human territories. My agents speak of a great military mobilization. An old enemy, they say, someone they call the Desecrator, revealed himself once more. He brought ruin to Imperials in the past. They thought him dead, but it seems that wasn't the case. They are gathering forces to strike at him with all their might. He spoke, making a sign of great darkness, spreading fear and terror. If the stories I heard of this Desecrator are true, O mighty one, he is nothing else but Montau, personified. Aun Va struggled to not make a sign of overreaching student, but he knew how to control himself. Guela, the humans, were so prone to mysticism that he knew to not take all he heard from them too seriously. But the fact that he knew that this desecrator wasn't in fact Montau personified didn't matter. The fact that humans did was all he needed. After all, when two fight, the third finds their chance. He made a sign of a patient hunter observing two vicious predators. The infighting between humans gave us a chance to act, he stated calmly. While they try to counter our movements now, soon they will be distracted by this old enemy. If we act swiftly, we will be able to exploit that moment of weakness. He finished making a sign of a hidden blow. Your wisdom is absolute, mighty Aun. Shadowwave bowed before him deeply. What do you require of me to help you accomplish this noble task? Aun Va turned back towards the window. I shall speak with the great Aun Vei and the Ethereal Council. Soon I shall convene an elemental council to address the current situation in the north, he said calmly. I want you to choose one of your pupils to accompany me on the coming mission, as well as to contact Shaso Borgshas, the Burning Wisdom, Koro Dog Drag, the Green Dragon, and Theo O Elsa Almar, the Perceptive Hatchet. They shall land me their own students as well. Watercast made a sign of contrition. As you wish, mighty one. May I ask who else do you wish for your counsel? Aun Va stopped himself from cringing at that question. It was tradition, since before the coalition rose from the ashes of a first alliance, that a member species of a coalition to be part of every elemental council. An outside perspective, which Aun of a distant past believed could help the Tau in achieving their goals. Outdated tradition in the eyes of Aun Va. But he wasn't yet Ethereal Supreme, and even then he wasn't sure if he would have enough power to change that particular tradition. Contact the great Kalsha of Nikasar and Huan Zi of Mekian Commonwealth to join my council, he decided after a moment. As you wish, mighty one. Watercast bowed deeply. With your permission, I shall leave and accomplish this task. Aun Va made a sign of a grateful teacher. Go, may the light of Tauva guide you. Kai Seta made a sign of a grateful student before leaving the chamber. Aun Va remained silent for a few long minutes before speaking into the shadows. When can your hunters be ready? He asked, doing his best to keep his voice steady. Something, or rather someone, who remained invisible until now, moved in the dark corner of the room. It was a fire warrior, but in name only. His armor was nothing like the armor used across the septs of the coalition. Nor were his weapons, nor was his demeanor. Few symbols decorated his plain silver-blue-black armor, red lenses on his helmet, unmoving and uncaring. "We are always ready," Monad warrior said in a harsh tone, keeping his hands unmoving. Aunva's eye twitched for a split second. Aunva's eye twitched for a split second. He might have been one of a mighty Aun, one of a celestial caste, but there were few of his species and beyond who didn't instinctively felt unease when near one of the Lancers, members of the coalition special forces. They were Drasfan, outcasts, not because of what they did, but their own choice. They were antisocial, cold, heartless, focused on a singular goal: to become Tha-Hasiro, the living weapon, the death incarnate. That's what they were. Outcasts, living weapons, tools, not commanders, not leaders, not symbols of hope. They were weapons to be used in the bloody work that had to be done if the greater good was to endure. And they knew it. They knew it, and they embraced it with their stone-cold hearts. Praise the Tauva, that despite their nature they served the greater good, rather than to fall into the true darkness of Montau and allow selfishness to dictate their actions. They rarely used the sign language that spoke so much about Tau's character and thoughts. Their hands remained unmoving even before one of the Aun. The freezing void of their souls was so absolute, even the burning aura of ethereals barely reached them. "When I travel north, I want your Lancers with me. You shall be used to counter the forces that try to stop our righteous expansion." Aunva kept his eyes focused on the crimson visor of a Monad warrior. 3 more shadows moved and materialized into 3 warriors as their advanced stealth fields disengaged. Ethereal kept his composure, not showing even a hint of a surprise or how uncomfortable he was looking at the 4 Lancers standing in his presence. He didn't know that there were so many of them in this room. "As you wish, mighty Aun," Monad warrior answered in a monotone. Without as much as a bow, they made a singular step back, disappearing into thin air as their stealth fields activated. He couldn't even hear them. The extremely expensive and mostly experimental technology of their suits, ensuring that only the most advanced of sensors and senses could detect them. Aunva turned to look at the beauty of a few town and his homeworld, contemplating the irony or how one needed to call upon the shadows to keep the light of Tauva burning. Echo of lies floated silently in the dark, heartless void. It was a newer vessel, taken by force and intrigue from a young rogue trader dynasty few sectors over. A great addition to the fleet of the Hell's Hydra warband. The ship traveled through total darkness. They weren't near any star system, nor asteroid field, A somewhat distant purple nebula breathed some color into the dark void. Far away, in front of the vessel, a baleful aura of a Hadex anomaly shone in dark crimson. But there was something else there as well. Something not one servant of the Emperor knew about. So, it really is here. Luciana Danin, ship mistress of Echo of Lies, allowed herself to grin.
And here I thought I have seen everything already.
The massive form of Alpha Legionary boomed on her left. Their eyes were glued to the massive construct that remained unmoving in the void. The Warp Gate. The great crescent moon-shaped construct was over 100 kilometers wide and shone with power. The gate was open, ready to be used. Luciana chuckled. Come now, Orxis. It isn't the first gigantic Xenos construct we've seen in our travels. He smiled. She knew he did, both because of found memories and because they both knew he wasn't speaking of the Warp Gate.
No, it wouldn't.
He turned to look at the slim figure standing in the corner of a bridge.
But it would be the first time I saw an Eldar who spoke the truth.
The Xenos moved forward in an unnaturally smooth way, her dark purple armor and black robes not making a sound as she approached. Her face partly hidden behind a hood that covered most of Xenos' features. It could be the last time you see anything, if I desire it. The Eldar spoke with a tone made of a crystallized void itself.
I'm sure you would want to try, but you won't.
Orxis turned his attention back to the warp gate, but remained ready to strike at any second.
You gave Hell's Hydras great service, revealing where our current employer intends to escape, if he fails to achieve victory.
Alpha Legionary remained silent for a moment, before turning to her.
I shall inform the rest of my brothers. The deal stands.
He paused.
Unless you changed your mind. There are better ways to use our talents than what you proposed.
The unnaturally beautiful features of the alien female twisted into an expression of hatred that made both Orxis and Luciana stiffen. The depth of hatred in those dark eyes was colder than the void that surrounded the Echo of Lies. No, she spoke in a thin note of fury. You have one task. Deliver Lord Inquisitor Valentin Dubastal to us. Alive, if possible. Dead, if not. He must pay. She spoke as a suggestion of a tear appeared in her eyes. Orxis remained silent for a moment before nodding.
Very well.
He bowed respectfully.
You will have your vengeance.
The Eldar steadied herself before turning away from them. She reached to her bracelet, a bracelet made from the shattered body of her home, her craft world. She squeezed the rune of a destroyed craftworld Arif Kelor in her fist before she spoke again, tears of hatred flowing down her cheeks. Yes, yes, we will.